was first introduced to this idea of a core memory when I watched Inside Out with my kids a few years ago. Basically, it's something that's happened that is so powerful that it shapes who you are, how you act, your personality, your values, and it gets stored in a special place inside your psyche. Most of them happen when you're a kid, but the one that I was drawn to immediately when I heard this concept was one that happened when I was in my early 20s. I'd been married for a couple of years. I'm sitting in the backyard of my in-laws' house. They were throwing a party, which meant that I was there and I knew basically no one else. And so Megan's off mingling and seeing people she hadn't seen in a while, and I ended up sitting next to the husband of one of her high school friends. And we hit it off. We talked about some sports for a little bit. We talked about all kinds of things going on in government and around the world, current events. We talked about church issues. We talked about people we knew in common and kind of what we thought about them and their situations and all this stuff. And it was going really well. We talked for a long time, and then his father-in-law walks over and said, "I should have known that you two critical cynics would have found each other." And it took me back. I laughed it off in the moment, but I thought to myself, am I really this critical cynic that is so obvious to everybody else that they can see that from so far away? Because it's not like this guy knew me very well. And I thought for the rest of the night about the conversations that I'd been having with this guy. We were talking about how everybody else had gotten it wrong and we knew the right answer. We were talking about how we were better than other people that we knew because they had got one over on us, and now they were reaping benefits of things that we thought were maybe our fair take of situations. And over again, it was what other people had done or should have done, and the ways that we were probably better off than they were. And seeing myself clearly as someone with a critical spirit, as someone that without a lot of hope, really stung because that wasn't who I wanted to be. And it was even worse because those things weren't really the problem. They were symptoms. They were fruit of something else that was growing inside of me at the time. What was inside of me that was growing was something that you might have a sense of too. It's always kind of there. It's in here. We kind of feel it in our chest or our stomach sometimes. Sometimes it feels like jealousy. Sometimes it feels like a slow burning resentment or rage. Or sometimes it's just a sense of numbness. But it's bitterness. All of us are going to go through life and we're going to be hurt. We're going to be offended. We're going to be disappointed. We're going to be let down. We're going to be betrayed. Things that are not good are going to happen to us. And bitterness is what happens when those things that aren't good get internalized in here and dwelt on over and over again. And we dwell on them over and over again because we don't see God doing what He's supposed to do in response to these things. We don't believe He's acting justly for our cause. And because of that, we've got to dwell on it. We can't let it go. So the people that bulldozed you to get the job that you should have had, you can't let that go because they're still doing okay and you're struggling. The person that did the unthinkable to you, you can't let them go because they've moved on, but how are you supposed to? Other people have taken what should have been yours, popularity, money, jobs, positions, girlfriends, boyfriends. Why do they have it better than you? Or maybe you love your kids, but you feel stuck and you've given up dreams because of them, but other people haven't. Maybe you're even bitter with God because He let things into your life that never should have been there in your mind. Like, why did you have to lose that baby you were carrying? Why did the person that you promised to spend your rest of your life with decided they don't want to keep that promise with you? Why have you lost your job while other people don't? Why have your parents died while theirs are still alive? And God, why aren't you doing anything to make it right? We think it's about us being just. Because justice is a virtue, right? And we want to balance the scales. We feel they're out of whack because they owe us something for what's been done to us. And God, you are not making it get paid. And so we dwell on it, and we see God not doing what we think he should be doing, and it's like another thing getting thrown on top of it, and it just drives it down deeper into us, which makes us dwell on it again, which makes us look to see, God, you're not doing what I thought you were supposed to do, so it gets drilled down deeper again, over and over and over again, until it gets to the place where we decide that we get to be judge, jury, and executioner in the lives of the people who have wronged us in these ways. Now we want to make them pay. And we might not ever do it outside of ourselves, but within our spirit, that's what we're doing. I mean, the fact that I was so critical of people that I made it feel like I was superior to them in situations was because I thought they owed me, and that was one way they could pay. Maybe you sit there while you're washing dishes and it's like, if only I could make this person get their comeuppance, and I know just how to do it if the situation happens. Maybe it's you just replaying in your mind over and over and over what happened and what they should have done differently or what you should have done differently. Maybe it's you sitting there in bed hoping to sleep, but instead you're thinking about what could you do to feel better. Usually that has to do with what would happen to them that would hurt them to make you feel better and balance those scales. Andy Stanley put it this way in Enemies of the Heart. Victims want to be proactive about making sure that the person who hurts them pays. So we spend our energy telling our sad stories rather than taking responsibility for our behavior. Thus we open the door of our hearts and we welcome in the Trojan horse of bitterness, and it stands there, a monument, a constant reminder of a debt someone has yet to pay. Somebody owes us. And because God's not taking care of it, the bitterness grows and grows and grows. I want to say right now that there are some things that have happened to you absolutely were wrong. Absolutely, justice should be brought about, and amends may need to be made, and things may need to happen. The abuse, the affair, the deception, whatever it is, all of those things are legitimate causes for justice to be taken into account. But this bitterness that you carry because you don't trust God to help you through it, well, it's like drinking the poison that you wish you could give to them and saying, that'll show you. You think it's going to hurt them, but really all it's doing is hurting you. The writer of Hebrews understood a little bit about what it was like to be in a place where people were disappointed and bitterness had a really good chance of showing up. He was writing to Christians that their culture had turned against them. They'd gone from kind of the weird outsiders to people that were actively attacked, persecuted. People wouldn't buy or sell your goods, so providing for your family was hard. And this wasn't how following Jesus was supposed to be, was it? And yet here they were dealing with this. And so he spends the book of Hebrews trying to deal a lot with who is Jesus, how is he dealing with all of these things that are wrong in the world, that even though he's come back, still seem to be evil, still seem to be winning at times. How come God sometimes will discipline us and that discipline isn't always comfortable? And as he gets to verse 12, verse 14, he says these words. Make every effort to live in peace with all men and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one misses the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. Holiness is the way of living that enables us to experience the powerful presence of Jesus in our lives. It comes when we are committed to Him and surrendered to Him so that whatever is for us from Him is good, and whatever He wants from us, well, that's good too. And bitterness shows up as something that takes that away. I mean, think about it. How can I be surrendered to Him when I think He's not doing His job, so I'm going to do it for Him? How can I be surrendered to Him when I don't trust Him? And so bitterness comes, and it takes the place inside of us, deep within inside of us, that the Spirit is supposed to have. And because the Spirit is supposed to show up and fill us, the Spirit's fruit is supposed to be what our lives look like. Loving, joyful, patient, people of peace, people with gentleness and kindness and goodness, people with self-control. These are the things that the presence of the Spirit, the root of the Spirit, grow out of us. They're not something we have to necessarily strive super hard for, because when He is there, these things come. And we may cultivate them, but that should be the byproduct of the Spirit's presence in our life. But when bitterness takes the place the Spirit is supposed to hold, when its roots go down deep, instead of those things, you get the fruit that I had earlier: critical spirits, cynicism. You get things like unforgiveness or jealousy or losing your temper or talking about other people behind their back or rage. I think about this. I think the pandemic was something that has increased bitterness almost across the board, because we've all been out of control. We've all been offended and hurt and disappointed, and somebody owes us and nobody's paid anyone back yet. And so we've dwelt over and over again on certain things, to the point that a lot of our media likes to fuel this part of us. It feeds the beast of bitterness, and rage comes out. In 2020, you could fly an airplane and be fairly safe. I mean, I was always worried about the people that were going to take their shoes off and put them up on the seat next to me, or clip their fingernails, or do things like that. But I never really worried about the people that were going to be so unruly that they would cuss out the flight attendants or start fights or jump up and down in the aisles of this little pressurized tube flying and hurling itself through time and space. In fact, you didn't really have to worry about it, because of all the flights that ever happened in a year in the United States, they only had about 189 people on average that you would have to worry about that. Only 189 flights out of all of the many flights that would happen in a year. Then 2021 comes, there's less flights, there's less people flying, but the number of unruly passengers exploded to 1,099 from 189 the year before. The fruit of bitterness will show up. And it's not going to look anything like the fruit of the Spirit. It's not going to look anything like the holy life that God intends for us to have, to experience His presence and His power. And thankfully, God puts something between the bitterness and the holiness that can do something about it. In fact, He even works out the way it's phrased here. So we make every effort to live in peace with all men and be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one misses the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up. Did you catch that? In the middle of holiness and bitter root is the grace of God. Do not miss the grace of God, this incredible thing that God gives us that's a free gift of His power and His presence that makes all the difference in the world. He's already extended it to us. He extended it to us before the thing that offended us happened. When we're dealing with it and being bitter about it, it's still there. Don't miss it. It will change how you feel. Instead of things getting turned inward like this and driven down, that can get pulled up from the roots so that the Spirit and His grace can come and fill its place. To do it isn't really that complicated. Admit that you don't deserve it. Like, bitterness makes you look at everyone else and say, look at them and what they've done. But when grace enters our lives, it forces us to look at ourselves and see what we've done. What have we done to grieve God? What have we done to hurt other people, even unintentionally? How have we wounded ourselves with the choices that we've made? And so we can get transparent about that. Maybe even write down exactly what it is that makes it so undeserving? Be specific, because if you can't identify it, how are you supposed to heal it? So we admit we don't deserve the grace of God, and then we position ourselves to receive it. For a lot of the times, that's repentance. That God, I am sorry for this, and I don't want it anymore, and so I'm turning and I'm going to go in another direction and position myself to receive your grace and your presence and to live a holy life. Sometimes it's simply opening yourself up and saying, God, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but come and check me out. See what's happening in me. In fact, that's one of the prayers of Psalm 139. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. And you can guarantee that God will hear those prayers and He longs to answer them because they're lined up completely with His will for us. But we have to trust Him enough to open ourselves up to do that. And if we admit we don't deserve it, if we position ourselves to receive it, then when we get it, we enact out of gratitude because of it. We love because He first loved us. We forgive because we've been forgiven. And so our acting in kindness towards others, even those that have offended us and hurt us, that is a response to say thank you to God for what He has given to us through His grace. If you want to live with peace with others, then we've got to get right with God first. And that enables us then to go and make peace with those that we can. Because it gets us to the place where we can say, you don't owe me anything. The question is, how badly do you want to experience the presence of God in your life in a way that that is the fruit that comes out of you? To live at peace, to have a holy life, to have love and joy and peace and patience and all of that flowing out of you as a natural response to the Spirit living in you, versus having a root of bitterness in you that separates you from God and lets rage and jealousy and envy and pridefulness and all this other stuff show up in its place. I mean, the truth is, I hate weeding. All right? I love a clean-looking flower bed, but I hate to get out there and pull the weeds out. My body doesn't like that position for some reason. I get tired of being out there like that, and I hate the fact that when I pull up a weed and it was hard to get the root all the way out, that 2 days later it's right back like I did nothing at all. But if I want it enough, if I really want the flower bed clean enough, then I'm willing to go out and do the hard work to get all those weeds out of the way. How badly are you willing to do the work of rooting out bitterness in your life, then you can experience the presence of God and be holy? After I had the conversation with that guy's father-in-law, I spent the rest of the week reading Psalm 139 over and over again. And I would pray that little prayer at the end, and I would write down what God revealed to me. Sometimes it was hurts that had been done to me, things I was carrying that seemed insignificant, but had made big wounds within my heart. Sometimes it was choices I'd made and sins that I had in my own life that were making me susceptible to bitterness. All kinds of different stuff come out. And after about a week, I'd filled up a couple pages, and I kind of figured, this might be enough. I don't know if I can take much more of this revealing. And so I looked to God, and I held these in my hand, and I said, I can't hold on to these and hold on to you at the same time. And so I grabbed a metal trash can out of the shed in the back, the place I was staying, and I took a lighter, and I just lit those things on fire. And I burned them up. It was just one way to kind of physically show what I was hoping was happening within inside my heart. And God did something in me in that moment that I will not forget. Because now I still think fairly critically, like I think through things, but I don't look at things cynically, and I do not feel above anybody else. Instead, I look at things, and where I see problems, I see grace. And where I see hurt, I see grace. And where I see things that should be different than they are, I see God at work. And I can trust Him that he knows exactly what's going on and that he's actually going to work all things out for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. It's not just something that I think anymore. It's something that is part of who I am. It is a core memory. And it's because of Jesus that that's happened. And so my challenge for you is, if this is something that hits you this week, then do the same thing. Read Psalm 139. Ask God to search you. Write down the things that are causing the bitterness to grow down deeper in your life and pull that sucker out by the roots. It has no place for your life if you really want to experience the power of the presence of God. You can't hold on to it and hold on to him at the same time. Lord, I pray that those who are experiencing bitterness right now and all of the things that come with it would be willing to come to you in such a way that you would let them, you would search their hearts, that they would let you go through their lives and pull out all of these things where they've been hurt and don't trust you to deal with it, where they've been wronged and don't believe you're on their side, where they still feel like they are owed. I pray they would not miss the grace that you have already given to them. And I pray that their lives would so be changed that instead of the fruit of the root of bitterness coming up, the people that see them will see the fruit of your Spirit at work and want to know how they can experience that too. Work in them, we pray.